right. Well, welcome everybody today. I'm Dan Sheridan, and I'm thrilled to have my friend Karen Bruton, who is an option trader, and for many, many years, and has done very well. She's a North Carolina fan, which is okay. I'm a DePaul fan, and we win every 20 or 30 years, a few games. North Carolina wins every year, so that's okay also. We both love college basketball. And so we're here today. We're going to talk about a few different things. First, we're going to talk for 15 minutes or so on the whole topic of selling strangles, selling an out of the money put and call, selling puts, selling iron condors, just that, from a big picture perspective, how Karen did it, what's her thoughts on it. And then when we're done with that, we'll get into a little bit on Karen's journey from the business world into trading, even though trading would be considered business world, wouldn't it? Yeah, I guess. And then we'll talk a little bit about, in her words, some of the things with the SEC and then her book. But, and we'll get a little more, I think when Karen talks about the journey, she'll talk a little bit more about herself and everything. To me personally, she's become a good friend. We don't see each other in person much, but we talk and interact, and I've got to know her more over the last couple of years. I'm thrilled to. She's in Is it Nashville?
It's a suburb of Nashville. Brentwood.
Okay, Brentwood, and she's been there. So we're going to talk strangles and short puts and iron condors, which Karen kind of did a lot of that type of stuff. And then we'll get into the journey a little more about Karen. But maybe starting out, Karen, why don't you, in the terms of strategy from a big picture perspective, talk a little bit about how you, and again, Karen was managing a big account, so it's different than somebody managing a $10,000 account doing an iron condor. Maybe talk about how that whole concept of selling premium.
Well, I went to a lot of your seminars. I went all over the country and went to so many of your seminars, and we never met.
I know that's kind of weird. Usually, yeah, we didn't. From coming to the seminars, I remember I would do seminars at different places, but we never really got to know each other at the seminars. It was more after. Right. So that's interesting. So you were learning. That's when you were, without getting into the journey too much, you had come out of would it be fair to say an accounting background or an executive background?
I was a CPA.
Okay.
I worked in public accounting, and then I was a vice president of the two last companies I worked with.
Okay.
So I had a high position in both companies.
Okay.
But I was learning how to trade, and thank you for that, because you taught me how to trade. But then I just developed my own way of trading that made me comfortable.
Can we say that made it better? I always say this, it's like the person, I always get to say, well, I taught Pete Nigerian on CNBC's Fast Money when he came to work with his brother, John. And I always tell people, you know what? Whoever coached Pete the little bit that he needed, he would have been a heck of a, it's like coaching Kobe Bryant in high school,
Yes.
and with you, I coach you, but, let's be clear here. I appreciate that very much. But I think whether Dan coached you or somebody else, you definitely, you were, it would shock me if you would not have been successful even with someone else, because you had a lot of, you would have been good. But anyways, thank you. But go ahead.
Well, I was still vice president of my company, but I went through about 2 years of just learning, teaching myself. This is not an easy thing to just read a book and it describes do this, do that, do that. If you don't know what you're doing and the market goes against you someday, oh, you're going to lose a lot of money. So you need to understand and just go through a lot of training before you start putting a lot of money in the market, trading options. If you want to buy stocks, that's one thing. I don't do any trading with stocks. I stopped that a long time ago, and now I just trade options.
What's the main reason, would you say, that you stayed away from stocks?
Well, I had a lot of Apple stock when Steve Jobs announced he had cancer. And then I had a lot more of Elon Pharmaceuticals in Ireland when they announced, I think the treasurer was monkeying with the books.
Okay.
So I lost a lot of money then.
Okay.
And I just stepped back and said, I need to learn from this and never do that again,
right,
or I need to quit. I decided I wanted to learn from my mistakes and keep going forward. And that was before I ever met you.
So you had good risk management lessons before you got
yes.
And what kind okay, so then you started your journey into options, and then how did you settle into the strategy that you used to do and why you did that versus many strategies out there?
Well, I was approached by a lot of people who wanted me to invest their money. I started small with just handling people's money that I used to report to.
Wow.
And friends kept coming in and asking me, because I was making a good return for the people I was investing for. And people just kept coming and asking me. So it just moved from $600,000 to $200 million in about a year and a half.
Yeah, quick. Wow.
Yeah.
That's like Beverly Hillbillies. That's a quick one.
Yes.
Wow.
But I never, they made the biggest year we had, the returns to the investors was a 54% return. The smallest, we never had a losing year. The smallest year was a 14% return.
Wow.
We usually averaged about 25% return a year.
In what years?
And I was trading very safely.
In what years did that encompass?
2008 to 2016.
Okay.
17.
Okay.
2017.
So 8 to 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, the core strategy you would do and your philosophy, just kind of how you approached it. And also, let's face it, it's one thing to trade a strategy, for 100 grand. You start getting up in the millions, you better have confidence in what you're doing and you better have a plan.
I do very similar to what I did back then. I trade to me, it's very safely. In the tortoise and hare race, I always describe myself as the tortoise because I always make it to the finish line. I'm only trading options. I trade about 45 days out.
Sure.
Because the extrinsic value in an option starts expiring, just trimming down, and the extrinsic value completely goes away within about a day of the expiration. And my goal is to make a minimum of 2% return on the total investment that I have. Not just what I have on that position, but the total fund that I'm trading.
I guess.
So,
2% a month.
2% a month.
I got you.
And I'm doing
Yeah.
better than that this year.
Are you doing similar strategy now to what you were doing? Or are you tweaking it because it's less capital than than you were doing? Or are you?
Well, what I do, what I just explained,
Yeah.
I do it every month. And I
Okay.
just put on a position for June the 30th this morning.
Okay.
So I do that, but I'm experimenting
Okay.
right now, little by little by little. And I'm trading. I put on a position today that will expire tomorrow. And then I'll put on a position tomorrow that will expire Monday. And I'm making my return has gone up from about 2.5% to last month it was a little over 4%.
Okay. So you're doing a little more some shorter term stuff too.
Yeah, it's expiring in a day, but I'm putting a put and a call spread on, but I'm trying to put the spreads out at least 70 points.
Okay. So you're doing an iron condor.
Yes.
Maybe a small credit, 70 points out with 2 days to go. So, which easily, or most of the time, will handle the expected move for 2 days. So you're outside of that. Maybe you're selling a 5 to 10 delta call or put, something like that.
I'm usually selling well, I go by the in the money percentage.
Okay.
So that corresponds to delta, but I'm usually around 2%, 2 or 3% delta at the most.
You're way out there.
Yes, I am.
So
I want to do this safely.
Sure. That's interesting. So back in a second to what you were doing with the big fund, but as a retail trader more now.
Yes.
So you're doing maybe a 2-day iron condor, very far out of the money for us. You're making it, 2% a week or 4% a week is excellent. Obviously the probabilities are going to be very low that you're going to get in trouble. But let's say 1 out of 20 or 30 or whatever times, what's your risk management basically?
I've only had one call get in the money.
Okay.
And I just moved it forward, and I didn't make, I just covered it with the cost of moving it forward and moving it further out.
Okay.
So I just didn't, but I just rolled it forward from a Wednesday to a Friday.
Okay, moved it a couple days further out. Give yourself a little more time.
A couple of days further out. So I didn't make any money off that because I covered the cost with the put. I'm still experimenting with this.
Sure.
But it's fascinating to me how much money I'm making experimenting with this.
Well, yeah, and lately in the market, it's been, we've been pretty quiet, pretty range bound in SPX and RUT lately. So keep going, right? As Oprah Winfrey would say, you go, girl. Yeah, keep going. But when you look at something like you're doing way out of the money, you're talking, you probably need the SPX. I'm just guessing. What would you think? 5% move in a week? You're going to need a heck of a move to
get into trouble.
Yeah. And it's something like that. It's just, it's you can almost just close it. If it goes against you, you're just taking a few losses a year. You just have to make sure those losses don't knock out too many winners. But yeah, I think that's and I think you have a good personality for that. I'm a little more risk of, when I get that close, I think I break out in hives or something. You just seem to me as a personality, you can handle stuff a little more, you remind me, what like Mark Fenton, who works with me, he can, he can handle that more. I'm just a little more risk averse. And even though I know that's more, when that's more enjoyable, it keeps you.
Well, I don't look at this movement as being risky. I've got a different personality, and I don't get scared. When Steve Jobs announced he had cancer, I panicked.
Yeah.
I've learned not to do that because I know what I'm doing. I just get annoyed when one of these positions gets in the money. It just annoys me.
But isn't it refreshing though? Isn't it refreshing playing with a vehicle like, we're pretty exclusive with SPX and RUT. And obviously if someone wants to do futures or futures options, that's fine. But you don't have, when SPX, you have 500 stocks there. RUT, you have 2,000. You're an index. You're right. You don't have to worry. Why would I play a stock for the most part? I'm not saying we never do, but why would you mess with that? Right? When something, like you said, Apple. This isn't like, Enron. It's a real company, Apple, and not that Enron wasn't, but so that's good. A question said, do you sell both puts and calls, iron condor at that 2 to 5 delta level? I think you said you did, right?
Yes, I do. I don't like selling calls, but I'm practicing. I'm experimenting with this. So this is working well. My normal position is about 300 or 400 points out of the money for puts. I just place puts on, but I'm experimenting with this, and I'm having I'm having fun.
I like it.
With this
I like it. I'm a big believer in diversifying your duration, and we do in the community. We do a lot of 30 to 45 day stuff, but then the fun part, you do a lot of 10 to 15 to even closer. And that's, am I hearing that? You're doing short-term stuff, but you're still doing, like you just said, you'll still do some further out stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
So your further out stuff, going back for a second to, one more question. Somebody said, do you just close the winners? Do you let them expire?
Let them expire.
Okay, so let them expire.
I never spend the money to close the winners.
Okay. And you're not getting that much of a credit. But I agree with you, right? You leave it alone. Now the losers,
just leave it alone.
The losers you'll roll to the next, like 2 days out or something like that. How far will you kick the can down the road if it keeps going? Let's say we go up and it keeps going up. You kick the can 2 days further out. Will you keep kicking the can, or will you close it at some point?
I'll answer that question when that happens to me. It hasn't happened to me yet.
That's a good problem. Yeah.
I had to put on my position early today because of this interview. So I put it on about 12 o'clock. I usually don't put the position on that will expire tomorrow until about 2 o'clock.
I got you.
Because the market goes up and then it comes back down, and then it goes up and then it goes back down, all in the same day. And I'm not used to that much market movement in a day. And I've experienced a couple of times at 2:30 the market just shifting and just going strongly the other way.
Right. What do you now? So give me a couple thoughts on when you say your core strategy, when you were managing 250 million, give us a typical strategy you put on, or a typical month. Are you selling just the puts, and why, or the puts and calls, and why you didn't? I know the answer because I talked to you a lot, but I know you didn't do the iron condor. Give a little bit why, and why you just sold the put and not as many calls, and why you didn't turn it into an iron condor, and what you did each month. Because you're talking $250 million.
I always thought, you can't get as far away and make money on the call side like you can on the put side.
With the skew.
So I was always more attracted to the put side.
Okay.
But I was trading safely, but I was not putting, I was just selling, naked.
Sure.
I was just selling a put. I wasn't buying a put and like I'm doing today. I'm doing 10-point spreads.
Okay.
Sometimes I do 50-point spreads, but mainly I do 10-point spreads.
And today,
but back then,
still you do 45 days out today or something.
yeah, and I put a spread on.
Okay, so when you were doing the big account, you
Yes.
might sell just the puts, and maybe a little more on why did you just sell the put versus the put? Oh, you mentioned because the call side didn't.
The calls are much more dangerous, and you can't get as far away and make as much money on the call side as you can the put side.
That's right.
So I was getting, rather than the spreads I'm doing today and making $3 a spread, I can go much further down and just sell the put and make $3. So I was trading that way back then.
Okay, so typically on the big account, you would trade maybe 45 days out and sell like 5 delta puts or 10 delta puts?
Yes, more toward the 5 delta.
Okay.
5 to 10, but I was trying to stay safe and trade the 5 delta puts, and it worked most of the time.
Did you scale them, or would you you because you had to, I mean, you have this plan, you knew how many puts you were going to sell each month. Did you sell them all at one barrel, or did you, I'm going to sell about 10,000 or whatever?
I traded, once I got going, I was trading puts every week, but I would put 100 puts on for this week and 100 puts on for next week and 100 puts on for the next week and 100 puts on for the next week. So it ended up just rotating the puts that were all out 45 days. So
I got you.
Some would come off, and then I'd put the 45-day one in advance. I just do that over and over and over and over again.
And what was your main risk management tool the few times that those would get tested? What was your basic plan when the market started to crater?
Well, I remember 9/11 and the market crashing, and I went through several crashes. I would just move the positions out 2 and 3 months because I knew the market would eventually come back up. Okay. And last March 2020, it fell significantly, and then it just started working its way back up.
Okay, so you will like move it out maybe a couple months with the high volatilities and wait it out. Okay.
Wait it out. Yeah. I wouldn't just take losses and the only thing that when I had positions out that far and somebody wanted to leave my organization, it depended on the percentage that they owned. If they owned a very small percentage and I calculated what those outlying positions would cost them, if it was just a couple of $100, they were just going to miss out on the profit that I was going to make. People who own a bigger slice of the pie, I would go out and calculate how much they would lose by shutting those positions down, and how many positions that they owned and shutting them down. And I would tell them that they're going to get hit with that loss. Most of them changed their minds.
Oh, I bet that I bet they did. I bet they
Yeah.
did. So you didn't really, so you would more or less roll them out. Did you do it when the delta, let's say you sold the 5 delta, did you do it when the delta hit a certain point, or what was your trigger point to rolling them?
My trigger point was on the day they were expiring. I'd watched them very closely, and if I knew if the market got within 10 or 20 points, I would just move them. But I only had to move a couple of positions several times, and I moved them way out. And when they expired, they were all making money.
Okay.
So I never damaged any of my investors by doing that. I saved my investors by doing that.
Sure. How would you say volatility level affect how you set up trades, or how did you use? I remember one time you were telling me, we had a conversation some years back, and VIX was really low, and you were buying some insurance or something. How did volatility play into your decision making? Maybe high vol, low vol. How did you play with the whole volatility game?
I've never paid any much attention to volatility because I'm playing so far out.
That's right.
It really doesn't matter to me.
Okay. So you never really bought insurance or anything?
Back when I had that $200 million account, I would get insurance from time to time. I would buy a put lower so that it would, if it fell in the money and I didn't do anything with a short position, that I'd only lose so much money.
So maybe would you buy a put when the VIX was at like a lower level, or would you buy a put? What would make you think of insurance?
When the market was going down and getting closer and closer to where I was.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I got you. So you didn't just buy it if VIX got to 10. You didn't just
no. I know what the VIX means.
Sure.
But I never pay attention to it.
Okay. So when the market, so there wasn't, one question says, was there a bearish market condition that you didn't add trades? Was there anything that kind of, hey, I'm not going to sell puts this month or this week?
I love a bearish market because I can get lower and lower and lower.
That's right.
And make money.
That's a great.
So when the market's down, I can get 300 or 400 points lower and make money.
See, that's a great point. When we talk credit spreads, students will always say, well, boy, the market's down, I get scared, and I try to get the focus on, the real plus of doing put credit spreads, like let's say an SPX, when the market's down, sure, you get a better credit, but VIX pops 4 or 5 points, you might get an extra 70 or 80 points further out. And that's a plus. So it's trying to get the attention of the student off of the, it's alarming when the market drops fast, but hey, Mr. Market is giving you more room, which is a positive.
Yes.
But I wanted to transition into your journey a little bit. I mean, you've talked about your journey a little bit, maybe kind of however you want to do it.
My journey, I look back, writing this book forced me to look back over my entire life, and I saw the pieces and parts coming together.
Let me interrupt you before we get into that, just so people are, Karen has a book coming out, will be called The Lamb of Wall Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the book is coming out. Oh, thank you. The Lamb of Wall Street, Karen Bruton, and she's going to talk about it. When will it be coming out about?
November the 9th. It's with Simon & Schuster, and it's coming out November the 9th, but it's up. You can go to Amazon.com or anything and pre-order it.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Now that we at least let them know the book coming, start back again to like the journey, SEC and then the book and how that all weaves together, your nonprofit and everything?
I knew I was being called by God to quit my job and follow him. And I was a vice president of a company here. And I had my whole life planned out. I didn't want to quit my job, but I knew in my heart I was being really called to do this. And I got where I couldn't sleep. And I got up one night out of bed and I said, okay, God, I'm going to the deep end of the pool and I'm going to jump.
Yeah.
And if you don't catch me, I'll drown because I can't swim.
Yeah.
And where I say that in the book, the last sentence in italics is, he caught me. Because I learned how to trade.
Yeah.
And so I was making money. I started trading my IRA.
Where did this weird thing called options come in? What was your first exposure?
I went to a program at the Coliseum that had a lot of different speakers, but they had a speaker from Invest Tools.
I got you.
That was the only speaker that said anything about the stock market. There were a lot of different speakers. Yeah. And my friend and I were sitting there listening to that. And he offered to anybody that signed up that day would go through a free seminar.
Okay.
So we signed up for it. And at that seminar, they were selling a program for $20,000.
Oh my goodness.
Now, this is all, this is way back.
Okay.
And my friend punched me and she said, let's sign up for this. And I looked at her and I said, are you crazy?
Yeah.
She talked me into signing up for it. So that was the beginning of, that was that 2-year program.
Okay.
And then I heard about you and started going to all your seminars. And I just learned and learned and learned. But I started out trading in stocks.
I got you.
Okay. And that's when Apple and Elon Pharmaceuticals took a lot of money away from me. So I just said, I got to stop trading stocks. And I just went into options. I took a lot of options courses. That Invest Tools course had 4 sessions, and 2 of those sessions were on trading options. So I learned a lot about trading options through that program.
Okay.
And it just kept pulling me in. And I'm so thankful for that because I don't have to, being a CPA, I would, like in Apple, I studied their financial reports. I studied their annual report, balance sheet, income statement. And I thought I had a wonderful investment. And then Steve Jobs announced one day he had cancer. I had no control over that.
That's right.
So I wanted to let that go and just get into options where I didn't have to study stocks and pick stocks, and then something outside the company happened to it, and the stock just fall like Apple did.
Good point.
Well, it wasn't, I never looked at it as money. I still don't look at it as money. I look at it as positions. You've got to know what you're doing and you've got to do the right thing. But I've never looked at it as money. I didn't, the $200 million account didn't mean anything to me. I was just trying to trade it wisely. And I reported to the Chicago board, the NFTC audited me, and they didn't find a thing that my trading was all up and up, up and up. I wasn't trading under the SEC. I didn't trade any stocks.
Okay.
So the SEC, there was a memo put out by the woman. This was under the Obama presidential period. The woman, I don't even remember her name. I have let all that go out of my mind. She put out a memo encouraging the companies to go after smaller companies, because she said all the big companies had internal lawyers, and that they fought them more aggressively. They fought the SEC more aggressively. She said, go after smaller companies. And about 2 weeks later, they showed up at my office. I had to explain what a put and a call were to those folks. And they saw in my heart and in my mind, they saw the money. Well, I won't go down that road, but my life is not about money. My life is about serving God. So he repaired my heart from what they did to my heart. And this book wouldn't have been written. I moved to Cyprus for 2 years. I was doing a ministry on the Isle of Cyprus.
Yeah.
And I got this phone call from this man I didn't know one night. And he said, you don't know who I am, but I've heard part of your story. I think a book needs to be written about you. So had the SEC not done what they did to me, this book would never have been written.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, just, I can tell you from a personal, I talked to Karen a decent amount of times and email as you were going through the trial that you did. And I could say it was a big encouragement to me that her eyes were focused on God and not herself, which is good, because as you're going through, I would look at it and say, boy, I couldn't handle that. That's what she's going through. But, you were an encouragement. And with the book, so you were talking a little bit about the gentleman who approached you.
He called me one night and I said, I'm coming home in, this was January 2019 that he called. I was coming home the end of February 2019 to sell my house and move into an apartment, which I've done. And I met with him. I told him I would meet with him. And he just loved the story about my life. And he hired, I am considered the author of this book, but they hired a writer that I would be the author because I told him my story.
Sure.
And he wrote it down. So,
Karen, tell a little bit about one of your main purposes, correct me if I'm wrong, with trading was, as you say, your heart was never after the dollar bill. You were good at trading, but it was really about your ministry in Africa. And that's really, but why don't you tell a little bit about that? And even during the period you were trading, most of your profits were going towards this ministry anyways, right?
It was. When I got that calling in 2007, I quit my job and opened up Just Hope International in March of 2007. Then when I started trading for a few people in 2008, I opened up Just Hope Foundation, and I was putting all the profits that I was making from trading for them into Just Hope Foundation. And that foundation is still functioning today, and it's paying all the administrative costs. When I started Just Hope International, I had worked for a few nonprofits, and don't take me wrong, nonprofits have to pay administrative costs. But I volunteered for a couple of nonprofits. When I looked at their books, if you gave them $1, 97 cents of it went to their administrative cost, and 3 cents of it went to the purpose that they were.
Wow.
I said I'd never do that. I've never spent a penny of any contributions on administrative costs. So I just swore I would never, ever, ever pay anybody that gave me $1, the whole dollar went to help somebody else in some other country. And I know I'm called to international work, but I volunteer for some things here locally too. But I've traveled all over the world. I've worked in South America. I've worked in Russia. I've worked in India. I've worked in Europe, and I've worked all over Africa. And I look back on my life and think, had I not said yes that night and gone to the deep end of the pool and jumped, what all I would have missed in my life. It's been remarkable. Yeah. So I'm so grateful that I said yes to God's calling. And it's been an amazing last 15 years.
Yeah. Karen, I know you've told me a little bit, which I think is fascinating. Give an example of the type of work that you do with the folk in Africa, because a lot of it you're trying to, you always think about, okay, helping, whether it be the poor in our country or the poor in another country. You think, okay, is it best to give money, or is it best to teach them something so that then they can kind of make, and I think you really kind of hit that on the nail. Maybe give an example, kind of how you approach things.
My comment is that I give a hand up. I don't give a handout, because giving handouts to people make them dependent on you. And this country is full of giving people handouts now, and I won't go into that. Yeah. But teaching, like some places in Africa, when I went to Malawi and I went to Sierra Leone for the first time, and I saw how they were planting. I went into small villages. I didn't stay in big cities. I went out into small villages, and I saw what they were doing. They planted corn in the same place for 10 years, and that corn wasn't growing as well as it could. They set fire to all their fields, and they burned everything. That's the way they clear their fields. I had a ag specialist, and I would take him to these places, and he would talk to them, and they were so grateful, and he would work with them and show them what had to be done, and they increased their output double, triple. They were able to sell some of it, not only feed their own families, but sell it. They were able to start making enough money to send their children to school. All those things just filled my heart, and that was my purpose. My purpose. We've um, we've taught people things. I worked with a lady in Peru that wanted to start cooking for people, and she rented a little store where they had one table and two chairs in it. And I worked with her, and I taught her how to do it and how to keep up with her cost, and how to what she had. When I would ask questions of people, well, how much does this cost to make this? They didn't know. They would just say, they would just look at how much it costs to buy this. They didn't know they were adding this to it and adding that to it. So they didn't know how to figure out what it was costing. So I worked with her, and I went back to Peru about 2 years later, and she had a complete restaurant, and she was just so happy to see me. And
that's so
in the book, it also talks about an area in Peru where the Shining Path would go into villages, and either the men would join the Shining Path. It was a militant group.
Shining Path.
They would get killed.
Wow. Okay.
Shining Path. I went into a village. I was told I was the first American to go into that village, and it was torn down. All the people ran and hid in the woods, and the Peruvian government didn't help them for several years.
Wow.
And I was there that day, and all the villagers came back, and I brought them guinea pigs, chickens, seed, and fertilizer, and they restored their whole village from
wow. No, I appreciate you taking time, Karen. It's amazing just to talk to you, and I'm glad you're back trading and just
show my book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is my life story, and it starts out, I didn't know how poor I was when I was growing up. My father spent 4 years in World War II overseas. He was in Europe and Northern Africa. I learned just about 2 years ago that my father was a World War II hero, and the epilogue, because he never would answer any questions that my brother or I asked him about what he did in the war. And I found information on him. And it was verified in Washington that he did what he did. So that's the epilogue in this book. I tell my whole life story. I didn't know how poor we were growing up because my mother and my father were so good to us. And I would tell the story about, I would say, Daddy, it's windy outside. Can we fly a kite? And he would say, go in the rag bag and get me some rags, and go out and get 2 sticks out of a tree, and bring me the newspaper, and I'll make you a kite. And I didn't know that we couldn't afford to buy a kite.
Right.
So I lived without anything. And he came home one day with an old canvas tent. And everywhere we went, we slept on the ground. So I'm thankful for that, because when I sleep on the ground in a mud hut in Africa somewhere, I'm okay with that. Because I was brought up sleeping on the ground.
God prepared you for your...
Yes, he did.
That's neat. Yeah.
So this will come out November the 9th.
Well, thank you, Karen. Yeah, it's been a joy having you today, and looking forward to the book coming out. And just good to see you. Next time I want to see you in person, but this is
Okay.
this is as close as we can get in the current environment that we're in. But
Yes.
thanks so much, and we appreciate it, Karen.
Okay. It's good to see you. Good to talk with you. Good to share all this stuff with you. And I'll come see you one day.
Good. We'll do lunch. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.